Ancient Egypt, what daily life was really like beneath the pyramids. No matter how many dusty mummies you've seen Brendan Fraser blast to bits, chances are you don't really know what ancient Egypt was like. Believe it or not, everyday life under the pharaohs was surprisingly advanced in many ways. In this video, we're diving into what daily life was really like for ancient Egyptians. From education and medicine to gender equality under the law, this ancient civilization was ahead of its time in ways you wouldn't expect. But before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more weird history content from around the world. Now let's travel to Egypt. The Nile River wasn't just the main source of water for farming and textile production. It was basically the highway of ancient Egypt. People from all social classes used the river to travel in skiffs and wooden boats, transporting everything from massive stone blocks for pyramid construction to the bodies of nobles in ornate funeral processions. But instead of dodging traffic cops, Egyptians had to watch out for crocodiles and hippos. Fun fact, Pharaoh Menes was reportedly killed by a hippo while on the Nile, and some believe a hippo might have injured King Tut, contributing to his early death. Cue a Hungry Hungry Hippos reference. Believe it or not, beer brewing was recorded as early as 18,000 years ago in ancient Egypt, and much like my Uncle Gilbert, Egyptians absolutely loved their beer. It was considered a daily staple, consumed by both adults and children, and wages were often paid in grain for brewing. Ancient Egyptian beer wasn't the fizzy stuff you grab at your local bar. It was more of a thick, sweet porridge with low alcohol content, perfect for having a couple bowls at dinner without picking a fight with a hippo. When it came to medicine, ancient Egyptians were way ahead of their time. They practiced dentistry, gynecology, surgery, and even early forms of autopsy. Medical procedures were a unique mix of clinical treatment and religious ritual, and healthcare wasn't just for the elite, it was available to everyone, including slaves. Cleanliness was a big deal too. Egyptians understood that being covered in layers of sweat and grime was a fast track to disease, so they bathed frequently with soaps made from salt, animal fats, and plant oils. Both men and women would regularly shave their entire bodies, including their heads, and wore perfumes made from lily, myrrh, and cardamom. They may have even invented the first deodorant using citrus and cinnamon, basically what we call breakfast. Even though they had impressive medical knowledge, ancient Egyptians didn't get everything right. They believed the heart, or IBB, was the seat of thought and emotion, not the brain. The brain was considered so unimportant that it was discarded during mummification, likely seen as nothing more than skull filler. As for law and order, ancient Egypt had a dual court system. The Kenbet for minor cases and the Great Kenbet for major crimes like murder and theft. The pharaoh's vizier typically presided over cases, but in tough situations, decisions were deferred to the will of oracles, or more accurately, to the statues of those oracles. Both sides would write their cases on slips of papyrus and place them on opposite sides of the road. Whichever side the statue seemed to lean toward decided the verdict. That has to be one of the most hilariously arbitrary justice systems in history. As we touched on earlier, gynecology was one of the medical fields practiced in ancient Egypt. But just like their beliefs about the heart and brain, they hadn't exactly nailed down all the details. While they understood that sex led to pregnancy, they believed the womb was somehow connected to the digestive tract. So to test a woman's fertility, a clove of garlic would be placed inside her nether regions. If the smell made it to her breath, she was considered fertile. If not, it meant there was a blockage and children were off the table. Garlic may be excellent in your spaghetti, but we do not endorse this method. When it came to leisure, board games were a huge hit in ancient Egypt. The most famous one was called Senet, played on a long checkerboard-style surface where players rolled dice or tossed sticks to move their pieces. Senet was so popular that images of Queen Nefertari playing the game have been found on ancient temple walls. Still no evidence of hungry hippos though, probably too soon for them. In modern times, male infants are typically circumcised shortly after birth, but in ancient Egypt it was more of a coming-of-age ritual, usually performed in the teenage years. Temple murals even depict priests carrying out the procedure on boys in their mid to late teens, proving that teenage nightmares existed thousands of years ago. The exact social meaning of circumcision in Egypt is still a bit of a mystery. Most pharaohs were circumcised, yet the same procedure was also used to humiliate prisoners and mark slaves, which gets complicated. Another surprising aspect of daily life was the widespread use of makeup. Both men and women wore it with pride, and yes, Imagine an entire civilization channeling their inner Pete Wentz with heavy eyeliner. They made their iconic eye makeup from ground lead ore, creating a substance known as kohl. Interestingly, it wasn't just for looks. The lead in the makeup contained nitric oxide, which boosted the immune system and helped prevent eye infections, though it came with a small downside of potential lead poisoning. Temples in ancient Egypt weren't just religious centers. They also functioned as banks, government offices, and grain storage facilities. Because actual money didn't exist yet, Egypt wouldn't introduce coinage until centuries later. Grain was the primary form of currency. Workers were paid in bread and beer, with a typical laborer earning about 10 loaves of bread and 2 jugs of beer per day, which honestly sounds better than some modern paychecks. Even though the Nile was one of the richest rivers on the planet, ancient Egyptians didn't eat much fish. In fact, their diet was mostly vegetarian. The staple foods were wheat and barley, no surprise when most people were paid in grain products. Fruits and veggies like dates, pomegranates, celery, and of course garlic rounded out the menu. Meat was a rare treat, typically saved for festivals or, if you were wealthy, whenever you felt like splurging on a roast. Living in a scorching desert climate meant ancient Egyptians needed practical, breathable clothing. Linen was the fabric of choice. Made from flax plants harvested along the Nile, linen was light, airy, and perfect for keeping cool under the hot Egyptian sun. It was also a major status symbol. The finer and whiter your linen, the higher you stood in the social ranks. Surprisingly progressive for their time, ancient Egypt's legal system granted men and women equal standing under the law. Women could buy and sell land, own slaves, file lawsuits, and even petition for divorce. Unlike other ancient cultures, female infanticide wasn't practiced in Egypt, which suggests daughters were valued as much as sons. To put it in perspective, when Alexander the Great's Greeks conquered Egypt in 332 BCE, they were shocked to discover that Egyptian women had more rights and freedom than their own wives back home. Education, however, was a privilege reserved for the upper class. Wealthy families sent their children to school where they studied subjects you'd recognize today: reading, writing, math, history, medicine, and science. The elite boys, like the pharaoh's sons and nobles' children, attended prestigious institutions known as princes' schools. There were even scholarships for gifted lower-class students, though it's unclear if these scholarships included a daily beer allowance. All in all, ancient Egypt was remarkably modern in many ways, offering its citizens a life not entirely unlike ours. So, would you want to live like an Egyptian, or at least walk like one? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to check out more of our weird history from the World Deep Dives.